Mr Deputy Speaker, and I would like to thank the member for Kingston for the way in which she conducts herself in a bipartisan approach, generally speaking, in this important portfolio. Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill delivers on two things which I believe should be critical priorities for any national government: delivering fairness in our military legal system and looking after those who have volunteered to serve our nation in the Australian Defence Force. The ADF is full of dedicated, hard-working and professional people. I've been fortunate to meet many of them during my time in this place. I've taken part in a number of exchanges and activities under the ADF parliamentary program, including spending some time with our personnel in Afghanistan. As a member of the Defence Subcommittee of the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade, and in my work on the Public Works Committee, I've had further opportunities to work closely with our ADF personnel. Our soldiers, sailors and airmen and women are some of the best trained and most disciplined in the world. In any large organisation like the ADF, however, especially one which by its nature involves stressful work under pressure, individuals will occasionally make less than optimal decisions. Some people will fall foul of the rules, and when they do, a court-martial stands ready to assess the facts of the case and pass judgment. Though a court-martial has special procedures most appropriate to the administration of military justice, it remains ruled by our society's core legal principles. One of the most important legal principles that underlies our justice system is the independence of our judiciary. To deliver fairness in legal proceedings, judges must be independent from the state's prosecution arm. It is that independence which helps to ensure the judiciary's impartiality, and impartiality is at the heart of fairness. In civilian life, a judge has tenure. There is clarity of their remuneration structures, and at least in some jurisdictions, there is a transparent process in respect to their appointment. The effect of Schedule 1 of this bill is to enhance the independence of these processes in the military judicial structure to further secure fairness in the cases that come before it. The bill will increase the maximum term of appointment for members of the Judge Advocates Panel, who sit as Defence Force magistrates and provide legal advice to court-martial members, from 3 years to 5 years. It will also provide for the Chief of Defence Force to set selection criteria and processes for the appointment of judge advocates to the panel in a notifiable instrument. This will support a more open selection process, providing transparency for all in how candidates apply and how they are assessed. The bill also ensures that remuneration for judge advocates when acting during a court-martial is determined by the Remuneration Tribunal rather than by the ADF, ensuring that judge advocates do not depend on the chain of command for their pay. This will bring the process of setting remuneration of judge advocates in line with the process for the Registrar of Military Justice and the Chief Judge Advocate, ensuring consistency and clarity as well as maximising their independence. The rules and procedures of these courts are set by the Judge Advocate General, who is supported in their work by the Chief Judge Advocate. Once again, this bill makes similar provisions enhancing the independence of that position. The bill provides for the Judge Advocate General to lay out in a notifiable instrument the selection criteria and process for the role. It provides for more robust processes for the termination of the Chief Judge Advocate where necessary, which are consistent with the standard provisions for termination of statutory appointments. Taken as a whole, the amendments in Schedule 1 will bring greater guarantees of fairness to the military justice system. They are part of this government's growing track record of bringing greater fairness to all aspects of our national policy making. We have brought fairness to our taxation policy, eliminating bracket creep for low and middle income earners and cracking down on multinational tax avoidance. We've brought greater fairness for vulnerable workers, passing legislation to punish employers who exploit them and banning dodgy deals between employers and unions. We've brought greater fairness to industrial relations, reinstating a tough cop on the beat in the construction sector and reducing exploitation of workers by the criminal CFMMEU. We have increased fairness in the distribution of GST with a more equitable and sustainable funding formula and greater fairness in medical treatment, listing an additional 1,900 medicines on the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. The contrast with the Labor Party and the Leader of the Opposition is stark. While we've introduced fairer taxes, the Leader of the Opposition wants to slug retirees with a huge new multi-billion-dollar tax. He wants to ensure that high-income earners on $200,000 a year can get a refund on their franking credits, but a self-funded retiree who's done the right thing and saved for the future will get nothing. While we've introduced fairer taxes for small businesses and more opportunity for society's vulnerable jobless, Labor's tax plans threaten 1.4 million workers' jobs and will undermine the investment decisions.
Order the member for Scullin on a point of order.
The Speaker might turn his remark to the bill. We've given him some leeway, and of course I noted he started off with a plea to bipartisanship. The last several minutes have had no relationship to the bill which is before the House.
Give the call to the honourable member for Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's perhaps no surprise from this Leader of the Opposition. The workers at Clean Event and Chiquita Mushrooms learnt all about what this Leader of the Opposition thinks is fair.
Order the member for Scullin.
Should direct him, if you will, Acting Deputy Speaker, to confine his remarks to the bill before the House.
The member for Fisher will be relevant to the topic.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. So while Schedule 1 of the Coalition Government's bill will support greater fairness in the administration of our military justice, Schedule 2 will improve fairness and security in the treatment of reservists who render defence service. Reservists are a vital part of our Defence Force and are commonly required to interrupt their lives and their employment to go on active duty alongside regular servicemen and women. Mr Deputy Speaker, I met a number of the most amazing, dedicated reservists who'd given up 9 months of their lives and served their country in Afghanistan. I met specialists like neurosurgeons, emergency medicine specialists, dentists, lawyers, a chaplain, to name just a few. Often in the process, these men and women sacrifice career opportunities as well as their personal lives to render this service, and existing legislation provides them with some critical entitlements and protections to mitigate against some of the impact of these sacrifices. However, unfortunately, sometimes reservists may not feel that those entitlements and protections have been complied with, and complaints sometimes arise. In fact, in 2017-18, there were some 1,400 inquiries of this nature. Mr Deputy Speaker, I recently had a discussion at one of my listening posts with a retired reservist who I'll call Tim, who served in the Solomons. And Tim felt that a number of his needs weren't being properly met by the DVA, and I undertook to Tim that I would look into them for him. Tim personifies what being a reservist is all about. He has a common day job, but has served his country in places like the Solomon Islands and in other places where he has experienced some graphic and very unfortunate circumstances which stay with him and live with him every waking moment. And this bill will go in some way to improving the reservists' complaint process. So I just want to make a bit of a shout out to Tim and thank him once again for the service that he's given this country. This improved complaint process makes the handling of complaints the responsibility of the Chief of the Defence Force, ensuring that accountability for looking after reservists lies with the ADF's most senior officer. The bill provides the Chief of the Defence Force with the necessary powers to investigate complaints of this kind and indeed any suspected breach of the relevant Act, including the power to give notices to produce information or documents. The bill further provides the Chief of the Defence Force with the flexibility to deal with complaints in the most appropriate manner. In particular, it broadens the ability of the Chief of Defence Force to deploy dispute resolution services other than formal mediation and gives them the power to compel parties' attendance at a conference to facilitate discussion. These powers will help to ensure that complaints are dealt with as quickly, fairly and efficiently as possible, and by extension that as many reservists as possible get good employment outcomes following their active service. This is only the latest in this Liberal National Government's strong track record of delivering support with transition and with future employment for those who've served in our armed forces. In total, in the most recent federal budget, the government committed more than $11 billion to provide the essential services that our veterans rely on. This is accompanied by a substantial package of reforms. We've instituted a policy of no discharge without documentation. For example, to ensure ADF members are prepared for civilian life and future employment with all the documents, including medical, training records, and to make transition as seamless as possible. We've delivered an extra $8 million for the Prime Minister's Veterans Employment Program, which includes a new veterans employment commitment to which businesses can sign up. This program will help veterans to identify employers who are likely to support them and reward employers for their insight. To help further, we've established individual professional career coaching for ADF members prior to and up to 12 months following separation from the ADF. Employment prospects for veterans can often be improved by further education, and we've allocated $10.8 million to remove the reduction in the amount of incapacity payments which eligible veterans who are undertaking approved full-time study as part of their rehabilitation plan. There's much more to be done in this space, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'll continue to encourage the government to examine ways that Australia can look at adopting a US-style GI Bill. Employment outcomes for veterans can also be significantly impacted by their mental health, and we've taken action to support this also. The Coalition Government has made mental health treatment free of charge for anyone who has served at least one day full-time in the ADF, whatever the mental health condition, and whether or not the condition is related to their service. We're funding a coordinated veterans care program for mental health which will support up to 250 DVA clients living in rural and regional areas who have mild to moderate anxiety or depression, alongside a chronic physical condition accompanied by pain. In total, we've committed an extra $89.6 million to support veterans' mental health, including $16.1 million for a new veteran payment for financially vulnerable veterans living with a mental health condition, $9 million to pilot new approaches to suicide prevention, and $7.1 million to extend support for families of veterans. To administer all of these programs, we have provided an additional $100 million in the 2018 budget on top of the $166.6 million last year to support the Coalition Government's improvements to DVA, upgrading internal computer systems and making sure we have faster and better service delivery to people when they need it. There are an estimated 15,000 veterans living on the Sunshine Coast, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I am absolutely passionate about ensuring we support our armed forces, both those who are serving and those who have served. In my own electorate of Fisher, I've instituted a Fisher Defence Industry Initiative to try and support new employment opportunities for former servicemen and women on the Sunshine Coast. I've held a local veterans forum, instituted a Sunshine Coast Veterans Day and advocated in this place for more support for veterans' tertiary education. I believe that this bill, Mr Deputy Speaker, though modest in its effect, will make important changes to the administration of military justice and the handling of reservists' complaints, which will see greater fairness for all ADF personnel. For that reason, I commend it to the House.